This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306.
All right, I'd like to call the November meeting of the State Water Commission to order. MJ, can you please call the roll?
Senator Somerville.
Here.
Senator Marsden.
Here.
Senator Stewart. Here. Senator Terry. Senator Steph. Here. Delegate Lopez. Delegate Bolivar.
Here.
Delegate Hodges.
Here.
Delegate Krizik. Delegate Rasul. Delegate Tran. Delegate Clark. Delegate Lawford.
Here.
James Patterson.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Great. Thank you, MJ, and welcome, everybody. First thing I want to do before we kick into the agenda is we have a new member of our commission. Bud Curtis is no longer with us and was replaced by Mr. Pattison, James Pattison, who's the former head of Department of Public Works in Fairfax County. Mr. Pattison, you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Thank you, Chair. James Pattison, Fairfax County. Spent most of my career working as Director of Public Works. I worked with Mr. Marsden for a long time, and I'm pleased to join this group.
Excellent. We appreciate having your some professionals on here, so we don't have divorce lawyers making water policy. So feel free to pipe in whenever you like. But welcome to the commission.
Thank you.
And let's see. We also had former commission member Brian Bayford was on the commission, but apparently he had passed away on July 22nd, and his seat is currently vacant right now. So he's one of our two civilian seats. So I was sorry to learn that. So we do have a quorum and ready to go today. So we have a few things on the agenda. We're going to hear about the Chesapeake Bay Agreement. We have a presentation on rainwater harvesting that we're going to hear about. And then at our last meeting, we didn't have a quorum. We thought we were going to have a quorum, then we didn't. And we had, and this says Ms. Cottrell is going to give us a summary of what happened at that meeting for those who weren't there. We also had intended to approve two legislative concepts at that meeting, both of which we had approved last year. So it was just, we're going to do that, then we're going to do that, then we're going to have a PFAS conversation. And just so everybody's aware, there should be a series of bills in your package, two of which are new and were posted online. One of which is a concept from Senator Stewart, which I'm gonna let him talk about. I'm not sure he's totally okay with his concept yet, but he's getting there. And then there's a fourth concept. It was suggested to me a couple days ago to give localities the authority to require PFAS testing, and that's in the packet as well. But I hope to have a conversation about that to see if we can achieve some kind of consensus, or if not, we can continue the conversation, because there's a lot of conversation going on about PFAS. That's what I hope to get done today. And I have Crime Commission starting at 12. So, and then the senators have to be in Radford for the Senate Finance Committee meeting tonight. So we need to move the meeting along. So, having said that, why don't we go to the first item on the agenda, which is Adrian Kutula and Jay Ford to come talk to us about the revised Chesapeake Bay Watershed Agreement, what that means for Virginia. Why don't y'all come on up and fill us in? Welcome to the commission.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm Adrienne Petula. I'm the Virginia Director for the Chesapeake Bay Commission. It's a pleasure to be with you here this morning. So how we're going to divide this presentation is I'm going to discuss the refreshed Bay Agreement that is coming before the Chesapeake Executive Council on December 2nd for their blessing. And then Jay is going to take over with how you might see that agreement implemented through policy proposals before you at the General Assembly session coming in January. So again, thank you guys for having us here this morning. All right, so the Chesapeake Bay Commission, for those of you that aren't aware, is a tri-state legislative body with members from Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. And we focus on policy work related to, obviously, restoring and conserving the Chesapeake Bay and its watershed. So because the Bay is such a critical natural and economic resource in our region, the work of restoring it has been done cooperatively since 1983. Could you do the next slide for me? All right, here's the clicker. All right. So the cooperative framework that this work is done under is the Chesapeake Bay Watershed Agreement, and the Commission, EPA, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and DC have signed on to that agreement since 1983. We were joined by New York, Delaware, and West Virginia during the 2014 agreement. The Executive Council, those are your governors, the chair of the Chesapeake Bay Commission, and the administrator of the EPA on behalf of the federal government, as well as the mayor of DC. This agreement is really the guiding light of the work that we do to restore the watershed, and without it, we absolutely would not have made as much progress as we have to date. So, at the upcoming Executive Council meeting, again on December 2nd, what we're doing is updating the agreement from 2014. So the 2014 agreement, with many of our 10 goals and 31 outcomes, had a deadline of 2025. You've heard from many of your advocates over the last decade, we have this 2025 deadline, we have to meet it. You know, our water quality goals are critical, our oyster goals are critical, and frankly, we did a pretty good job in meeting those goals and outcomes. So the first thing we did as a part of refreshing is go back and look at, in fact, how we achieved those previous goals and outcomes. So the good news is we met about 2/3 of those outcomes from the agreement. Examples of that are restoring our oyster reefs in 10 tributaries, That was a resounding success. We're now an international model for oyster restoration. As a result of that, we constructed 300 new public access sites to local waterways throughout the watershed. We opened up 619 stream miles that had previously been cut off to our aquatic resources. The other side of that coin is that the remaining 1/3 of our outcomes we were not fully successful in. I think you all are at this point aware we did not meet our 2025 water quality goals despite making a significant amount of progress. As a watershed whole, we met 49% of our nitrogen reductions, 64% of our phosphorus reductions, and 100% of our sediment reductions. Similarly, we are also behind in some of our key habitat restoration goals. Think wetlands, think tree canopy, think forest buffers. As you all have probably heard our state forester say, trees are the answer. So many of our environmental concerns can still be solved by those types of practices going on the ground. So with all of the lessons that we learned from our failures, the signatories have come together with input from the public, of course, to propose a refreshed watershed agreement. Now, I'm not going to walk you through every single goal and outcome in the agreement. We don't have time for that today, so instead I'll give you the highlights and then let Jay take over. Again, as a reminder, the Executive Council will approve these new goals, these new outcomes at their December 2nd meeting. So one of the top priorities in refreshing the agreement was to simplify and streamline our structure. That's why you see 4 goals on the screen now instead of 10. We've also gone from 31 outcomes, down to 21 outcomes. The first goal, coordinated work on bay restoration, really started when our blue crab and oyster fisheries collapsed. We quickly learned how important those industries, those resources were to our communities, and that's why you see thriving habitat fisheries and wildlife as one of the key pieces to the puzzle. We will continue to restore our oyster habitat. We've committed to 2,000 acres of increased oyster restoration within the watershed through 2040. That is our new target deadline, is 2040 for this agreement. We've also committed to increasing both tidal and non-tidal wetland restoration, 3,000 acres of each. At our commission meeting last week, we actually heard about the outstanding work of the Department of Wildlife Resources embarking on wetland restoration. It will be important for us to shepherd those projects to success and continue to plan for additional projects into the future if we want to meet our habitat, wildlife, and fisheries goals. Healthy landscapes. This is a space where we've seen mixed results in the past with stellar land conservation efforts across the watershed, but simultaneous loss of forests and tree canopy. So moving forward, we have again committed to protecting another 2 million acres. We've provided a list of priority landscapes for this effort: riparian forests and wetlands, agricultural lands, tribal homelands, urban and community green space, and the natural lands that support some of our watershed's healthiest streams and habitats. The partnership will also provide decision support tools to local governments, as they're the ones who are making the tough decisions on the ground. Of course, our clean water goal still addresses the Chesapeake Bay total maximum daily load, making commitments for the jurisdictions to continue to accelerate progress towards our current commitments and setting out a path forward for how we will continue to meet our pollution reductions in the face of changing environmental conditions. This is also where the Chesapeake Bay Program Partnership works on toxics and emerging contaminants, so this connects to the PFAS work that I'll be talking to you all about later. And finally, the one that I feel is so vital, thriving communities. Of course, we want our communities to thrive alongside our watershed, and of course, our work involves everyone. Working with local government leaders is one of the priorities of the program, because they're the ones making those local land use decisions I already mentioned. We are recommitting to increasing capacity for local stewardship actions. That's those local nonprofits planting trees, doing the trash cleanups, all of those key on-the-ground efforts that are happening. We're building capacity in those entities. And we can't simply rely on volunteers. We're also turning our focus to workforce development as we move forward, helping people build career paths that will get them working towards our mutual goals. And then the one that is my personal favorite, environmental literacy, educating our future generation on this important work and how they can do these projects, this work themselves moving forward, and connecting them to their local resources. And with that, I'll turn it to Jay to talk policy.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. For those of you I've not met before, I'm Jay Ford. I'm the Virginia Policy Manager with Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I'm always excited to talk about the Bay Agreement. It is a good reminder of how comprehensive the approach is to bay restoration. I think a lot of times people think fish and water when they see me coming, but that could be anything from land conservation to local planning, air emissions, clean energy, flooding, tree canopy, or as we just heard, environmental education and environmental literacy. And I think that's really a testament to to how well thought out and comprehensive the Bay Agreement is, and that's the recognition that in a watershed of 18 million people, you really need to take an all-of-the-above approach to hit your goals and to make sure that they're durable and sustainable for the long term. So we could talk about bay restoration all day. I'm told I have to keep it under 2 hours, so we'll get going. Yeah, so we'll break for lunch. So what I'm going to do is not go through all of the outcomes. I'm going to pick up on ones that Virginia and the best available science has positioned us to take action on now. So the next General Assembly, the next administration. And so we'll walk through a couple of these. We would be here all day if we went through all of them, but these are items that are ready to go. So one of the first areas under thriving habitat, fisheries and wildlife is fish habitat. This is always a really dramatic space, but one thing that there has been broad consensus around is the fact that climate change is driving significant impacts and changes within our fisheries. We are waiting on a comprehensive report from the smart folks over at VIMS right now, but what we are missing is sort of the what's next to that report. And so we are looking to create a policy and economic roadmap in the face of climate changes. There's going to be impacts to our existing fisheries for watermen as well as folks working in the aquaculture industry, and wrapping our arms around that is a question for both workforce as well as the health and habitat of Chesapeake Bay. Additionally, funding for freshwater mussel hatcheries. This has come up before you all for a couple of years running. Freshwater mussels, really exciting area, especially if you like mussels like me. These, we have a number of rare varieties throughout our tributaries. They do great work cleaning up the freshwater here before it makes its way to the bay, and we do not currently have the capacity to get them out at the scale we need to. And so investing in those hatcheries will help accelerate their deployment, helping both endangered species as well as cleaning up our waters. Another outcome within this category is oysters. We just heard about the success of oysters. We want to lean in and keep that, keep moving forward. So a key piece that we have yet to do here in the Commonwealth is what's known as an oyster stock assessment, where we do a comprehensive analysis of our oyster resources and the potential grounds. So when we are making restoration decisions, we know how to get the most bang for our buck. This is really about being able to deploy dollars with the highest rate of return and make sure that we are accelerating oyster restoration efforts around the state. Additionally, funding the Conservation and Replenishment Program, that's been incredibly successful through the Virginia Marine Resource Commission. That fund supports both the restoration reefs as well as making sure that we're getting shell out there for our watermen who are taking harvest to drive economic development. And so that fund has always been split between those two objectives and has been incredibly successful, as we've seen. And the economic, the watermen and the conservation side, they inform one another. Both sides of this are accruing benefits to the other by getting more oysters in the water. And then this is something you'll hear a lot about over the next couple of years, and that's generally modernizing our fisheries management. When the oyster stock assessment is one piece, generally we have underfunded VMRC when it comes to the tools necessary to make sure our fisheries are well maintained. We know we've had issues with things like poaching, impacting some of our oyster fisheries, but we're not using the best available technology to make sure that we're staying on top of it. And modernizing that fisheries management will make us more effective moving forward. Another habitat goal is wetlands. This is one where we went in the wrong direction. We had a goal for wetlands creation and enhancement, and in fact, we lost significant wetlands during the last iteration of the agreement. This is an area where we really need to dig in, so there's a number of recommendations here. One that's really come to the top of the list in a number of conversations is this idea of a wetlands migration corridor. The biggest challenge to our wetlands right now is that they have no place to go in the face of sea level rise. So they are running into existing structures, to elevations that don't allow them to migrate, and as a result of that, they're drowning in place. They play a huge role in managing both water quality and quantity, mitigating floods, helping make our communities more resilient, and we are losing them at a really astounding rate. The concept of identifying migration corridors would be to find those spaces where wetlands could naturally migrate and making sure that we're taking steps to protect that land where possible in order to allow these environments to persist into the future. Along with that, an idea that has been bubbling up for a while is how do we incentivize the beneficial reuse of dredge material? For too long, when you dredge something, it is usually viewed as waste. In some cases it is. The material might be unusable, but in many instances, that is a valuable resource that sometimes we're taking out and we're dumping on sleeping blue crabs when it could be going onto a beach or wetlands to help maintain that ecosystem in the future. So we're hoping to make beneficial reuse the policy of the Commonwealth wherever economically and scientifically feasible. I'm going to jump ahead to keep us moving, but another area we've really struggled, we've been doing tremendous work in living shorelines. They have been very successful since the passage of that bill, and it has led to a good amount of acreage being created in the wetland space, but we do not currently have a mechanism for the state to do large-scale wetlands restoration work, and that is really where we would start to see our target chunk down over time. The clean water goal, this is one you usually hear about, and I regret to inform you that it's mostly money. You got to keep, we have to keep our foot on the pedal when it comes to wastewater and stormwater needs assessments. I do want to pause here because you all had a conversation about WQIF last year, and I want to just note to the committee that that work group has met twice now. We're starting to make some really promising movement on how we can refine programs to make sure they are more effective and to make sure that we are maximizing the rate of return. I also want to highlight the Pay for Outcomes program, which Delegate Bulova brought into existence through budget language, but has been so far tremendously successful. They received over $100 million in potential projects for a $20 million fund. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the term, Pay for Outcomes it's a new approach that is not based on modeled outcomes, but rather you get paid for the pollution reduction you can produce. And so it provides an incentive for innovation. It also gives the state assurance that we're actually getting those nutrient reductions in that the price per pound that we are paying is actually occurring on the ground, and that is really crucial in this work. Adrian touched on this, the toxic and emerging contaminants. PFAS does fall under there. Not really going to spend any time on this since I think you all are going to spend plenty on this in a little while. But I do want to highlight microplastics here because this has been less discussed, but biosolids are also a dominant convergence point for microplastics. And so you have the opportunity when you're having this conversation about biosolids to maybe tackle two emerging toxins at the same time. I think this stat that over 90% of the riverine microplastics that make their way into the bay never leave, it hurts my head every time I think about it. We are a filter for every tributary that is draining into the bay. The microplastics are settling into the bay, into our estuary, and 90% of them are never making their way out into the ocean. So we have been on a one-way aggregation path that is extremely troubling when we start to look into the impacts of microplastics. Adapting to changing environmental conditions. I want to note that the concept of changing environmental conditions is how the Bay Agreement is now talking about climate resilience and adaptation. This is a standalone outcome, but it is also woven throughout the other outcomes. We need to be considering changing environmental conditions in all areas. But here in Virginia, we are now facing a shortfall when it comes to the Community Flood Preparedness Fund. We are still not in RGGI, and we are running low on our general fund dollars, so this is a critical area needing to fund. Also making sure that our resilient revolving loan fund comes into alignment with our resilience principles, which include nature-based design. I do want to highlight this Resilience Adaptation Feasibility Tool, or RAFT. This program is very much aligned with the Bay Agreement, revised Bay Agreement outcome here, which is to help sub-watersheds think through adaptation. The folks in the RAFT program at UVA, ODU, Virginia Tech, they are working directly with folks in the sub-watersheds to develop resilience plans and think through these questions, so they are very aligned with this objective. And Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, this program has been the prime driver for living shorelines in Virginia, and we're really excited that this year it is way overprescribed. That's the problem we want to have, is that we have so many people trying to take advantage of this program that they have 4.5 million. They have applications that could go as high as 8 million, so we are encouraging folks to put additional funds into that fund. Adrian already touched on trees. Unfortunately, headwinds are coming against us when it comes to trees. We have seen cuts on the federal level to the Department of Forestry, urban and community forestry positions. These two positions are absolutely key to getting dollars on the ground in our built environment and getting trees in the ground. Additionally, we've had an ongoing conversation about localities' authority to conserve and replace tree canopy for many years. It's longer than I would like to talk about it, but we're going into one more year on this, and I just want to stress two things. One, tree canopy authority is not the same across Virginia. If you live in Planning District 8, they have authorities that the rest of Virginia does not have, and that is problematic for folks that are in their locality trying to preserve tree canopy. Additionally, there are a lot of things in preserving and enhancing tree canopy that localities want to do that they cannot do because the General Assembly has not given them permission to do so. What we'd really like to see is localities empowered to be able to take these steps on their own. They're asking for that, and it could help move the needle in the right direction on tree canopy really rapidly. And I think this is my last area I'm going to touch on. I love this one because it's so easy. Protected lands, we do an awesome job of this in Virginia. Our biggest challenge is making sure that we actually fund our land acquisition programs. Coming up with a consistent funding source for things like VLCF and DOF is the quickest and most efficient way to not only meet this Bay Agreement outcome, but also there's so many corollary benefits. All of these investments hit on multiple areas, but land acquisition is one of the most straightforward. So with that, I think Adrian and I would both be happy to answer any questions you all have.
Hey, anybody have any questions? Looks like Senator Stewart has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jay, you said at the end of your presentation, I pressed the wrong button.
that localities want certain ability with regard to tree canopy that they don't have, but you didn't list an example. And I'm curious about that because under the zoning powers of a locality, they pretty much can do anything they want. So what is it that they want that they don't have the authority to do now?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator Stewart, that's a really good question. So right now, if you're in Planning District 8, you have the ability to require site plans for conservation of trees. The rest of the state does not have that expressed authority. We've heard from the City of Richmond last 2 sessions ago, Delegate Carr carried legislation that would have expanded that to all planning district commissions. Unfortunately, that bill did not make it past the governor's desk. On top of that, throughout this summer, we've had a series of stakeholder groups with advocates in local government from Northern Virginia, Central Virginia, as well as folks in the affordable housing arena. And the things we heard were there are currently in statute caps on the percentage of tree canopy you can require in certain areas. They would like that to be a ceiling or like that to be a floor and not a ceiling. So they could require higher canopy percentages. So I think those are the two things that have really bubbled up the most. We have helped generate a report with some other partners that we'd be happy to share with you. They provided a lot of feedback from both local governments as well as housing advocates in this conversation. Yep.
Any other questions? No other questions? I have one quick question. I was poking around the other day because I had to give a talk to a bunch of people who are eating oysters. And I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
But I went on, it's the virginia.org website. Which I don't know who does that. I don't know if that's a state website or not. I guess it is. It's the Virginia Tourism website. And on that website, the Virginia Tourism Authority says that by the 1890s, half of the world's oyster supply came from Virginia. 24 million bushels were the record year. And then it talked about how in 2001, I think, it was 21,000 bushels because of the decline. And so I'm just curious, I assume 24 million is probably a non-sustainable number back then, which is partly why everything collapsed. But in terms of the goals that you all have set, I'm trying to just get an understanding of like where we're trying to get back to, like how that's figured out, whether we're trying to get back to what we used to be, whether we're trying to get back to halfway, whether we're trying to get back to something scientists have said are sustainable. And an oyster is just one proxy for the conversation, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to get a sense for that. Do you have any way of verbalizing that or answering that? Or?
I'll take the first whack at it, then you can take over. So what we are doing, we are working obviously with scientists at NOAA, at the Army Corps of Engineers, in private, nonprofit fields as well. And we're just trying to very slowly restore the population at a level where it is able to continue to sustain itself. And so, the 2,000 acres obviously is extremely small by comparison to what we had back in the 1800s, but it is a starting point for how we can continue to build moving forward and make sure, as a part of this process, we're going back and making sure that the reefs that are restored are successful, that the oysters are growing, and that there is a naturally reoccurring spat set that happens. And so, Jay, you can probably go into more detail.
Well, I think, Mr. Chairman, I think Adrian hit the nail on the head. When we talk about restoration, those are achievable goals that we would be protecting in perpetuity. The goal in that acreage, though, is to make sure that we are locating it in places where it is adding to the natural rock, helping to encourage spat growth there, to make sure that we have a robust population. So that 2,000 acres is really just the anchor point for what we're going to permanently conserve, but it has ripple effects throughout the tributary. So as I mentioned, the oyster survey, the goal is to figure out where's the best place to put these to make sure we're driving economic development and that we're getting as much corollary oyster growth as a result of these oyster reefs.
But sort of as a, trying to get back to like, just say for the sake of argument, 1900 was here. And we're like here. Where are we trying to get to right now?
As much as we can get. As much as we can.
Well, I get it's as much as we can get, but like, what percentage of the way back is that? Like, I don't have an understanding of that.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, so we used to say,
And I'm just saying oysters is just a proxy for one
Yeah.
part of this conversation. I mean,
in Bay Foundation land, we used to say we wanted it to be back like when John Smith got here, and by all accounts,
you could put a
probably-
bucket in the water and pull out a bucket full of fish just riding
Yeah.
down the bay back
Well,
then. But I mean,
by all accounts, he may have been stretching the truth a little bit. So, what we say now is, we want to make sure that there is enough conserved reserves that, to Senator Stewart's point, really the sky should be the limit. The more tributaries that we can restore, the more economic development we can get out of this, and the more co-benefits we're going to be able to receive. So it is, the hope is that we'll continue to build up that conserved that helps drive exponential growth over time. So I hope that in a couple of years, we'll be able to come and give you another update that says, we've already hit our 2,000 acres, and here are all the great economic and water quality benefits as a result, and then we'll set another goal and keep going.
okay, I think Senator Marsden has a
Yeah,
question.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm on a oyster panel, and one of the things that go here, we're not just talking about a volume of oysters that you want to haul out and ruin the next 5 years of harvest, but like on the Chesapeake, or excuse me, on the Rappahannock River, they dividing it up into 3 areas is my memory from my last meeting, so that you're harvesting in one area one year, another harvest in the other area the next year, and then a third. So it's not just volume, it's also sustainability, where you're trying to maintain a certain population of oysters. And I don't know what that population is, but part of it is just making everything where oysters can thrive. But at the same time, we really need to look at how many we take out in a given period of time so that it's a sustainable thing for the industry and not a feast or famine kind of arrangement.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, Senator Marsden, thank you. That's a really important point. Again, it is part of why we're pushing for the oyster stock assessment, because too often something happens and then management decisions are essentially a knee-jerk reaction rather than something that's been planned out for a couple of years. We do rotational harvests on our public grounds. That generally works pretty well, but it doesn't mean we get it right all the time, and that's why we need that additional data to make sure we're closer to the mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I meant to ask this at the Bay Commission meeting the other day, and I forgot. And we've talked about putting those shells down so that spat can settle on that and create more reefs. One of the things I don't understand, and I probably represent more oyster area than most anybody else, when you put those shells over to create that area and then you work that and you scrape it, do you end up taking all of what you put back down, or does any of it stay, or do you have to continually do that area with more shells? You understand what I'm asking?
I think so, Mr. Chairman. Senator Stewart, are you talking about when we do replenishment?
Yes.
Work? Yeah. We do shell ground multiple times. There's a number of different factors that go into that, but our folks over at VMRC that have the expertise in that area will do pretty continuous monitoring of where they've overboarded shell to see what's happening, ground quality. There are a number of factors that can come into it, but ultimately you want to get it in a place where they're going to succeed, at that sweet spot in the water column. And so that's what they're really building and managing to.
Mr. Chairman, it's really not what I'm asking. When you dump those shells over to create a reef so that oysters will grow on those shells, and I'll use tonging as an example, I said scrape. When you tong that, do you end up bringing up those shells? Does the oyster grow on that shell that was planted? So then do you have a bottom that's then devoid of shells and you have to do the same process all over again?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, Senator Stewart, as you heard from VMRC last week, when they do their oyster replenishment work, they generally are putting overboard at least 18 inches of shell for the area to be successful in creating a new, community for harvest. And so it would, I think in any harvest scenario, there would be probably a top layer removed as a part of that, but it is so, the depth is such that it would be sustainable for a number of years afterwards, and of course would naturally start growing as a part of that as well. And then again, it goes back to the rotational harvest that VMRC also practices, so then you would have an additional number of years added on before anybody would be going back to harvest again. So I think they are intending to be sustainable in their approach in a number of ways, and in addition to looking at sources other than fossil shell in the James River. So, yeah.
D-Staff, did you have a question? Oh, and Hodges too.
I had both a question and a statement, and one would be to help answer the question about the 1900s. And back then, Mr. Chairman, they used to tong quite frequently, and we have pictures of them in Broad Bay, right around the corner from my house, where they were tonging just massive amounts back in the early 1900s. More recently, probably 20 years ago, I planted a bunch of oysters, and I'm right off of Broad Bay, and now the oysters have migrated or expanded about 1.5 miles one way and about 3/4 of a mile the other way, and they just keep growing, and they're getting bigger and bigger and very large in some areas, and they're not being harvested at all. I don't know if they're being counted in your study area or how you guys are looking at that, so do you count it that way? And then secondly, I own 4 different pieces of property where 2 of them naturally have had oysters, and they're just not harvested, but they are continually growing and expanding and moving out into more and more of the shoreline and even deeper. However, the other 2, we don't have many oysters. We have a lot of mussels up in the bank, and then a tremendous amount of crabs. But in all of the properties, all 4 of the properties outside of my primary residence, all 4 of the properties, there's nobody harvesting anything there. It's just all natural and growing and growing and growing. How do you account for that in what you're looking at? And then how do we deconflict areas? Because in areas like that, it's huge. It's great for oysters. But to deconflict, you have areas like Broad Bay, which now you've got in the summertime 200, 300, 400 boats a day going back and forth in there, recreating in there. So it's not really conducive to a lot of oyster planting and a lot of oyster harvesting type activities, where the other areas, there's a tremendous amount, and there's, like on one of my pieces of property, we're lucky if we see a boat a week out there. And that's a good thing. And we have a tremendous amount of oysters up there. So how do you kind of balance and account for all of that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator DeStef, I'm very familiar with both of the locations you're talking about, so I appreciate that. I think when we think about oyster distribution, making sure they're everywhere is really important. I think a lot of times there's a tendency in natural resources to say we could get the most of this thing we want, if it's trees or wetlands or oysters, if we just do it in that rural area. But that doesn't help the local water quality, which is really one of the goals in all of the areas. When we think about these investments and natural capital like oysters, we need them to be everywhere. We understand there are certainly conflicts in between the two, but for the folks in those regions down in the Bay and off the Lynn Haven, it's really driving water quality improvement. So it's the reason people want to be out on the water and jump off their boat and be able to swim is because we do have oysters there. So we really just encourage responsible development. There is a right balance between the competing interests, but you can't sequester your natural resources in just the rural parts of the state. You have to have it everywhere, so everyone benefits from it.
Mr. Chairman, one quick follow-up, if I may. And Jay, lastly, and you are familiar with a few of my pieces of property up on the shore end. On the other end, I worked with Chesapeake Bay Foundation on doing oysters, spat on shell 20-something years ago, and they're just all over the place now in that area, which, you know, everybody's super happy, well, except for one of my neighbors, because they had a nice little beachy area, and there's a lot of oysters, and they're not so happy about that, but that's okay. But with in an area like Virginia Beach, around the Lynn Haven waterway system, we found the best way to clean the water is by dredging a lot of material out that both VIMS and VMRC have come in there. We've worked with experts from VIMS on that multiple times, and the Army Corps of Engineers even chiming in on that with a few of the programs. And part of that reason is a lot of it is direct inlets going into the Lynn Haven, direct inlets going into Broad Bay. We did a tremendous amount of cleanup when we took the private sewer systems and put them on city sewer. The last one, I think, was Green Hill on the Bay, maybe 8 or 10 years ago. But things like that, I think, clean the bay more than oysters ever could in that area. But really, the direct inlets, you can put as many oysters as you want in that area. It's not going to clean it as long as you have that much trash and rubbish and stuff in those direct inlets going into the bay. So how do we like find, again, that balance in the more urban areas like Virginia Beach, and get that? You know, I think that we've got to. This needs to be an all of the above approach, not just one with oysters. And I just want to kind of get your thoughts on that a little bit more.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator DeSteph, I couldn't agree more. It is all the above approach. As I said at the top of my comments, there are countless outcomes. They all impact one another. We could talk about wastewater and stormwater and lawn fertilizer in Virginia Beach. We could talk about dredging and oysters, but it only works when you're doing all of it. And so I would agree with you. It's a all of the above approach. Oysters play a really crucial link in that chain, but so does local planning and many other things in Virginia Beach. And the most success we've ever seen is when all of these things are sort of singing from the same sheet. And Adrian, anything else to add on that?
No, I would agree. I think it goes back to the stewardship actions that I was talking about earlier. So it's your local governments, it's your local residents. It is everybody pitching in a hand to make sure all of the different goals can be reached.
This will be the last question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I do agree. It's an all of the above approach, but oysters to me are definitely at the top. I mean, they filter 50 gallons a day, I believe, one oyster. And part of as far as the limitations on building oyster reefs is really access to shell, and I believe that's really tying your hands. And we have other technologies out there and trying to build reefs, with other things. But have we really looked at the use of the prehistoric fossils, which some states have done? I believe Maryland has done that. And there's some locations right in the Middle Peninsula where we have access to almost an endless supply of shells, prehistoric shells that could be used to build oyster reefs. King William and Nestle Purina. And that actually was used to build it in a living shoreline. They ground it up and they used it in a living shoreline, and it was absolutely incredible to see that now, and the oysters that are striking on it now. So using that as, and looking at that could be really an alternative and a cost-effective alternative to really help save the bay. So it'd be great if we could look at that.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Hodges, as a part of their presentation to the Chesapeake Bay Commission last week, VMRC did discuss their fossil shell program. Right now, it is largely focused on the James, but they also discussed how they are starting to look into other options to continue, continue the program into the future and make it more sustainable. So other locations, other technologies, all of those options are on the table as far as they're concerned right now.
One more question, Stuart, and we gotta get moving.
On me. So, and I'm familiar with this from growing up in the Northern Neck, and we have all over the Northern Neck channelized wetlands. And so y'all are familiar with the CCC camps, and I guess that was under Roosevelt's New Deal. They went through all these areas and they channelized these wetlands to drain them. And so what used to be, I don't know, 2 acres wide or whatever, now you still get a little bit of it. Has anybody ever done an assessment of that as to how extensive that is? I mean, I know just in the little town of Montrose, the places that I duck hunt, they were all done. I mean, pretty much everything's done unless a beaver's come back and stopped it up. It is channelized, and maybe that's another approach. We talked about this again, if we could just build wetlands, get a permit, and I think it's more of a Corps of an Engineer issue. But even filling back in where they dug those channels could make a tremendous amount of wetlands. So I offer that to you all. Might be a good project for y'all to think about. I mean, I know in my area, there are a lot of wetlands that were channelized by those CCC camps.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Stewart, I'm not personally familiar with any study that's been done specifically. That being said, I think that's why it's important that we have the creation and enhancement of wetlands when we talk about that outcome, because there are a lot of good ideas out there about how we could take existing wetlands, improve them, and put them in a posture where they might be more long-lasting or naturally migrate in corridors over time. So I think improving the quality of wetlands is very much on the table in the coming years.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Okay, next up, we got Tyrone Jarvis. Mr. Jarvis is going to talk to us about rainwater harvesting possibilities in Virginia. Mr. Jarvis, how long do you need? How many minutes do you need?
Not many, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Okay, try and keep it down to 15. We got a big PFAS discussion we got to knock out. So.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Tyrone Jarvis. I'm
We have a
small
PowerPoint
business.
too?
Yes.
Yeah, let's see if we get that up.
I'm a small business owner in Newport News. I own Go Green Automotive Care. Also a co-founder of a nonprofit, the Society for a Secure and Sustainable Water Future. And I'm also a certified rainwater harvester, holding those credentials for over 10 years. And today we want to just talk to you about the possibility of a simple idea to accommodate and protect our water resources in Virginia. And it's a simple solution that we want to suggest, and that's using rainwater to cool our data centers and provide the operational water needed to supply them. And we're simply asking that, at the minimum, if data centers could collect and reuse at least 30% of their water for on-site research, reuse, it would have a tremendous benefit to Virginia, our water levels, and just have a way to provide water for the future and secure our water future. Using rainwater for cooling centers, just to cool their data centers, wouldn't require any specialized treatment to potable levels. It's mainly going to be used for non-portable sources, so there's not a huge cost associated with it, but has a huge benefit for Virginians. Currently, the estimates are that most data centers that have 250,000 square foot roof capacity, and they're pretty much using 18,000 gallons of water per day. With that roof capacity they have and the potential to harvest that much water, it's equal to the water they use. So at 18,000 gallons per day, it equals up to about 500,000 gallons a month. That's the equivalent to what falls from the sky onto their roof. So we're not asking, even though the potential is there for them to capture everything and have all the water they need for every day, We're just asking for somewhat of an offset, 30%. And of those who want to participate and go further, that would be a blessing. Got a little stuck. Okay.
There we go.
So why does it matter? Water is so important to all of us. Data centers are too. They're an important part of our economy, and we want them here. We just want to strike a balance so that residents and Virginia has enough water to continue growing as a population, and also as data centers and other enterprises come and make home in our beautiful state. There's a lot of opportunity. Rain is just used primarily is looked at as stormwater, and it's gone unused and neglected. More people consider it a nuisance, but it's a resource that we could capture and reuse to our benefit, and also create resiliency and further what we've already built on in Virginia as becoming a leader in sustainable water. And this speaks towards the opportunity that we have here in Virginia. The total usage of water from a data center of 250,000 square feet is 6,570,000 gallons a year. Larger ones use even more water. That same amount of water can be captured from their roof, and it's a simple math formula. 250,000 square feet, if that's the area you're multiplying in the calculations, you times that by 0.623, and the inch of rain that you're approximating would fall. And Virginia gets around 40 to 44 inches a year, which gives you that 6 million gallons, or more than 6 million gallons. So the resource is there. We just have to look at it differently. And it doesn't require us to impose on any security related issues around data centers. We don't need to know how much water they use, and it's pretty much just fixed on their roof area. If it's a 250,000 square foot building, 30% of that is what we're asking. And that would be protecting their rights and their proprietary information that they have, and we're not asking for any sensitive data. It also serves as a backup plan. Most facilities have backup generators. They expect, they predict, they want to prepare for power outages, but they're left vulnerable. If water isn't available, if the municipal supply can't deliver the amount of water they need every day, then those cooling centers are going to fry. So I think data centers could see that it's to their advantage to have this kind of system. And in case of a drought, or if in case of an interruption in city supplies, municipal supplies, they have enough water to carry them through for weeks, days, or months, depending on the size of their tanks that they decide to purchase. The cost is very little compared to the benefits. If it's at the design stage, it wouldn't cost a tremendous amount to implement it, and it has like tremendous benefits for everybody. There's cities like James City County that need to prepare and plan for water for the future, and some of these data centers, just one alone, the amount of water they use is equivalent to the household uses annually of James City County, and that's just one data center. So there's a balance we could strike if we just made that investment. So, of course, it decreases the stormwater flooding. If we're not capturing and reusing that water on site, then that 6 million gallons that could have been used for the operation is now going to the Chesapeake Bay. It's now creating more problems that we have to spend money on infrastructure to handle. So there's a lot of benefits outside of just supplying and making the data centers more sustainable. And Virginia is the capital of data centers. And we want them here. We don't want to drive them out. We would like to see them take this on as a matter that makes them more sustainable and shows the public that they care about the same resources that we depend on. And it positions Virginia as an example to other areas where data centers are located, but we're doing it in a responsible way that protects our data centers and their interests, but also the water that's available for our future. And incidentally, in Sweden, there's a data center owned by Microsoft, and they are so proud of their system using rainwater harvesting, and they offset all their water uses by 90%. So it's doable and happening now. So we suggest maybe concentrating on newly developed or expanded data centers, but it could expand out to existing ones also. And again, not a lot of treatment would be required to have this water used for cooling towers, and it streamlines the permitting and no hurdles for data centers to achieve these techniques. And we would like to let DEQ, VDH, take the lead on the authority of it and using certified rainwater harvesters to ensure the quality, the safety, and the reliability of the systems. And that would ensure that everything functions properly. We've talked to a lot of delegates and senators, and some have suggested that maybe including the existing tax incentives that are already given, and maybe some portion would be withheld unless they did the rainwater harvesting systems, and then they could get the full amount. That could be 10%, 20%. I would leave that to the experts. Senate Bill 1416 was passed in 2007. It was never funded, but it provided tax incentives and rebates for those who purchase rainwater harvesting systems. So that could be one avenue for assistance and offsetting the costs. Again, it builds on House Bill 192 and SB 851, which positioned Virginia as a leader in rainwater harvesting and recycled water. And it's something I'm very proud of, and I think we have the most progressive and common sense solution when it comes to rainwater here in Virginia. And it became legal last November to use rainwater as a potable source for your home, your business, whether you're showering, cooking, cleaning, or drinking. Well, we wanted to make sure that we didn't put a big strain on data centers. So we only asked for 30%. But the design is flexible. It can be scaled up to accommodate more roof capacity and more water that the data centers will want to use. Again, it doesn't require any potable water treatment. We're not trying to impose or expose any sensitive data or information from the data centers. All of that, we would definitely want to encourage just concentrating on the roof size and not the amount of water used. It's gonna definitely protect our groundwater and our surface water resources. It's gonna save us money on having to put more infrastructure in place to accommodate new data centers, wastewater. So it kind of a win-win for everyone involved. We would like that every new data center participate in this program. If we can get existing ones to also climb aboard and participate, that would be great. It would definitely position them and have a backup water supply in case of interruptions from nature or man-made disasters. And thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Looks like Senator Marsden has a question.
Thank you very much. Can this water system, is it consistent with something like geothermal, where it can be added to the supply of water being used for geothermal, or is that just geothermal just too expensive? I mean, is there any way that this can work with that kind of a more closed system of recycling water through the cooling and heating of a data center?
If it requires water, yeah. It could definitely work well with it. Any technology that uses water, rainwater can supplement that and in most cases do a better job.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Marsden.
Geothermal, I don't know whether it's prohibitively expensive for things the size of data centers. I don't know if anybody can comment on that, but what you're envisioning here is the fact that there would be a consistent water supply that could provide a certain amount of the cooling mechanism for these facilities, and a little less when there's a drought, a little more when there's a lot of rain. Is that what we're talking about here?
We're talking about rooftop rainwater harvesting. So conveying all the water that would fall on a data center's roof and conveying that to a tank. And I would estimate that most data centers would maybe need a 100,000-gallon tank to store that water for future use or daily usage. So it's something that they could either use a pond or tanks. But rainwater is so sterile, it only takes on the form of what it touches.
I see Bulova, Perry, and Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple really quick questions, if I could. You had mentioned, I think, this has been implemented in another country.
Yeah.
And anywhere in the United States that this has been implemented successfully?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I think there's a facility in Northern Virginia. They're using recycled water from maybe the SWIFT program at HRSD.
Okay.
So this would be like the opportunity for Virginia to lead again.
Gotcha. And then follow-up question on that. I am intrigued about the potential with respect to Chesapeake Bay requirements. Are you aware of any modeling or testing with respect to what kind of nitrogen or phosphorus removal you might be able to get if you were to implement the rooftop capture system?
I'm not sure if I understood that question.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, you had mentioned Chesapeake Bay pollutant reduction benefits, and I'm just curious whether that's been studied to the extent that you're able to show exactly how much reduction in something like phosphorus or nitrogen if you were to implement a system like this.
I can tell you that annually, the 6 million and more gallons of stormwater that runs off their roof is going to directly affect all our tributaries in the Chesapeake Bay and pick up any contaminants along the way. How much would be in that 6 million gallons of runoff, I'm not sure, but we could definitely turn that into a resource for their operations.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Perry, wow. We got Perry, Hodges, Tran, Lawfer, Pattison. And remember, we got to talk about PFAS. So Perry first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. I represent the district that's right next to Data Center Alley. So data centers are a huge issue for us in my district, and we also happen to be facing really drastic conditions with our groundwater tables at the same time. And so and my district has a large number of farms, and so I'm just. Is the idea here that, you know, obviously when the rainwater falls and it's collected, it's not going into the ground, it's being collected, at least for the 30% of the roof or whatever that you're suggesting that we should do that. Do you have any idea what that would mean for the groundwater table, specifically in Loudoun County? We have about 200 data centers so far, with another, I think, 117 that have been approved. So when we're talking about 30% of a rooftop, I'm thinking about large amounts of rainwater that will no longer go into our groundwater table, which has already been significantly depleted. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about that.
Definitely, as a rainwater harvester, that question comes up a lot, especially out west where that argument is made all the time. That rain has been allocated for farmers and ranchers and things like that. I guess it all depends on the pavement. Is there a way that the water could currently get to the groundwater? If it's all concrete and parking lots, then it's gone wasted and it's ended up in our bay or a stormwater system. So if they're directly injecting it or have some type of pond where it could trickle down, a dry well, which I'm a big fan of, then that would probably be a great answer for them to kind of show some community concern and address the concerns that you have too. But mostly what I've seen, most rainwater that ends up into stormwater and it's wasted. And never gets a chance to go into our aquifers and penetrate the soil.
Mr. Chairman, if I could. Mr. Patterson, as it relates to, I know you said that the rainwater doesn't need to be sanitized to potable standards. That makes a lot of sense to me. But it does need to be sanitized in some ways. Is that right? Because is the idea that this will be sort of mixed with, since the rainwater is undependable and we don't know when it's going to rain or how much, it would be mixed with the other vast amounts of water cooling. And let me say, we are, way beyond the 8 ball in terms of where we need to be in my assessment in managing data centers. So I appreciate these ideas and concepts, but the rainwater would be mixed with the water that's already required to cool the data centers. Is that right? In the same tubes and piping and things like that, or no?
Oh, the design could be either separate or it could be combined. So that it can integrate with a current supply to offset what they're using daily or monthly. So it could be a dual system or a single-use system that they could switch to rain for one day as a backup, or it could be integrated into their current supply. But as long as they're using vast amounts of rain instead of our public water, the end result would be surplus for our Commonwealth.
And Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, final question.
Do you have a trade-off percentage in terms of how much you think that this would trade off from whatever they're using from the local water supply? Like, are we talking about 10%, 20%, 50%?
I think simple math, if we could get them to use 30% of their rooftop rainwater and capture and reuse, it would definitely correlate to a 30% reduction in what they are currently using from our public water.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Senator, I believe, already addressed part of my question, but instead of just the aquifer, looking at surface water, because, a lot of this runs, even though it's on the pavement, it still runs into, areas where localities, or I think, just off the top of my head, say the Occoquan Reservoir, and the effects on those areas as far as surface water withdrawal for drinking water purposes.
Mm-hmm. And all of those aquifers are under stress that you've mentioned, whether we're talking salinity levels because we're draining so much. But if we're giving the aquifers a chance to recharge and recover, then we would definitely put ourselves in a better situation for the future as well as today.
Okay, and if I may follow, Mr. Chairman, sure. But I'm really talking about the surface water that's draining, say into a reservoir. Mm-hmm. So then the localities are then withdrawing from that. So the effects on, say, that reservoir from, running off, and, the rainwater is no longer going into that reservoir. Mm-hmm. So the effects on that reservoir, that could affect the drinking water for, the locality.
And it's all the same water. I get it. We're all rainwater harvesters, whether we're a city that runs on surface water using a reservoir, they're waiting for the rain too. But that also gets pumped right back to data centers or other places. So it's less energy, less infrastructure required if they're using it right on site. It's the same 6 million gallons they're going to use, whether we got it from the surface or from the aquifer. Whether we're going to save money and make wiser use of that rain that's going to be turned into flooding and stormwater and wasted. And there's a lot of savings there. Once water is used, especially with data centers that use evaporative cooling, that water's gone. We're not getting it back through the wastewater. It's just gone. So either we could catch rain that's going to be a nuisance and stormwater and let them clean it up and use that for their operations, or we can just continue using our aquifer water or our public source from the surface water. But either way, they're going to use that 6 million plus gallons every year. It's just where they're going to get it from. Turning trash into treasure and using it on site is a lot cheaper and more beneficial, I think, for everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate you bringing this idea forward. I think as today's conversation shows, we have to balance all of our water usage, whether it's from the river. And I just want to point out, I think there has been concerns about drawing from the Rappahannock to cool data centers. And in June, we had a conversation here, a presentation about how the Rappahannock's river designation as the most endangered in the United States. And I think what you're trying to help us see is perhaps another way of using a natural resource, and not all of the, like, you're not asking us to cool 100% or capture 100% of the rainwater for cooling purposes, but to capture some of it, which otherwise might not make it into our reservoirs or make it into as groundwater, but have other stormwater. So I appreciate that. I did a quick search for how to harvest rainwater, and it seems like you can put up barrels. Do you know if there is technology that is available to capture the amount of rainwater that you are suggesting for each of these data centers at 30%? Or is it just a lot of little barrels? Do you know what I mean?
No, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
At my shop, I have a 2,000-gallon tank inside my facility. We are currently working on a project in Norfolk at a community garden, and we built them a solar and rainwater system, and their tanks are 1,100 gallons. So you could buy, for sake of this topic, 100,000-gallon metal water tank for about $80,000. Additional would be shipping and assembly on site. But that's the scope of what the cost would be. So 100,000-gallon tank at $80,000 each one. You could couple those in series to achieve a more scalable amount of water. So they could go completely off-grid, or they could just have one or two of those tanks to supplement what they actually use every day.
Can I have a follow-up question, Mr. Chair? I also looked up whether or not water has to be treated before it is used to cool the data centers, and AI told me that there is some treatment that takes place before it goes through the coolant systems. Just by chance, are you aware if that treatment happens on site for the data centers, and would this rainwater then possibly go through the same process? Are you aware of that?
Good question. I'm glad you said that. So as a basic design concept, as a rainwater harvesting system, you do have first flush filters. So they divert the first initial rainfall that hits a roof away from your collection storage tanks. And it just goes to where your stormwater would normally go. From that point, you could use sediment. In my shop, we use sediment filters, charcoal, and carbon block, and also UV. And that innates all bacteria. My conversations I've had weeks ago with the health department has assured me that cooling centers, data centers that are using this type of system for cooling centers will not need any treatment to the level of potable water. So I've already made sure in 2 conversations with the health department that that's not the case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to the chair for bringing this speaker, and to thank the speaker for talking about an innovative way to solve a problem that we all have been noticing and affecting many communities. And I hope it's that we can take this idea seriously to see how it could be utilized in Virginia. I'm just grateful for you bringing this to us, and thank you to the chair.
Mr. Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep, just there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Jarvis. A couple questions. I was curious, have you worked with data center owners to kind of understand from their perspective, what's the business case? Why are they not doing it? Are there specific barriers? Are there the incentives that we have, do they help them, or are they looking for different kind of incentives from the data center owner's perspective?
I love that question also. I thought about it, but have not had a conversation with a data center facilities operator or owner. I can only imagine, like most of my experience and talking about these ideas, most people just haven't thought about it. And from conservation groups to elected officials, once presented with the idea, most of them say, we just haven't thought about it. And I think I'm gonna give them credit that I don't think they thought about it too. I think energy has gotten most of the attention when it comes to data centers. It's the more appetizing thing to talk about. And water has just become forgotten about in that arena. And I think that if they knew that they were better off being backed up with a rainwater harvesting system capable of supplying weeks of water, it would put them in a better position and strengthen them. And I think it's more, they just haven't thought about it. I don't think they're intentionally want to do wrong things. I think they just didn't know that technology was available and the cost associated was so small and compared to the benefits that they would get.
Okay, looks like that's it for questions. We had to get on to PFAS. But,
thank you so much. You have a wonderful
Mr.
day.
Jarvis, thank you for your presentation today. It's interesting stuff. So next up, this should go quick. Anissa, can you tell us what we did last meeting so we can have a little quick vote on reaffirming what we did last year? Move that along.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quick, so the commission met this past June. There were 7 presentations, which included the City of Richmond's water system failure that occurred on January 6th. They also included an overview of a 10-year plan that they have in store. The other one was the lead and copper and PFAS compliance in local water systems by VDH's Office of Drinking Water, where they provided a brief overview of the role that VDH plays in enforcing the laws related to PFAS. The next one was the future issues related to PFAS in the Commonwealth. That was provided by Dean Nodjokes by the Potomac Riverkeeper Network. They provided an overview of PFAS-contaminated biosolids, and he also highlighted Maryland's recent decision to restrict the use of biosolids. Then Martha Moore from the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation provided a presentation on farmers' perspective on issues related to biosolids. And then finally, you had a presentation by Chris Pomeroy from the Virginia Municipal Drinking Water Association that was based on the local wastewater provider's perspective on PFAS in the Commonwealth. Also at that meeting, we adopted the electronic meeting policy, and we discussed an overview of what was enacted and also what failed this past 2025 session that came out of the Water Commission.
Okay, so last year, you all might recall, we passed two ideas. One was H. Bill 2300, which we worked on, which was, I think, Delegate Campbell from from the Valley came to us, and that was to create some kind of a fund to provide so that homeowners could purchase PFAS filtration devices for their homes. I think Senator Perry carried that bill, and Senator Aird had something related, and I think it all went to finance, and nothing got funded and popped out. And then we also had a bill to look at the feasibility of expanding the SWIFT program to other water testing facilities in the Eastern Groundwater Management Area that was in the final budget, and the governor line item vetoed it out. And I'd like to just endorse those two measures again. Since in the Senate, we have a bill filing limit. If we approve them, then the bill is exempt from filing limits. So
Mr. Chairman,
is there a
so
motion for
move.
that?
Second.
Is there a motion? There's a second. Is there any discussion about that? Doesn't look like it. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? No. Okay. Now let's get on with PFAS. So, PFAS seems to be a hot topic, and I'm not really sure where to start on this, and I'm not sure we're going to get a consensus on it today. But there were two bills that were in the meeting materials, and I have Senator Stewart's bill in here, and I have another bill, a local authority concept that was floated to me, which is also in your package. And I just thought we ought to have some conversation, discussion about ideas that are out there and whether we ought to make a recommendation or sort of let the groups keep talking or what. Ms. Cottrell, could you explain the two versions that were in the package that you drafted?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. There's actually three bills technically that am in the same section. One of them is just only to the marketers and distributors of sewage sludge. And that one, that requires any person who receives a new or renewed.
Miss, which number? Yeah, you need to lean in where the volume's low. But also, can you also identify the version you're looking at with the number on top?
Sure. Yes, Mr. Chairman. So the one that's just for distributors and marketers, that is 0913. That's the LD number. That will require any person who receive a new or renewed VP/AP permit to market or distribute sewage sludge in the Commonwealth for land application to conduct a quarterly representative sampling of the sewage sludge for PFAS and have the samples analyzed by a lab. They're required to make a good faith effort to obtain results from that lab within 45 days of sampling date or within the shortest practical time. They have to report it to DEQ no later than the 10th day of the next month. And also provides that DEQ can grant an exemption from the sampling requirements if the permit holder demonstrates to the department's satisfaction that good cause exists. It will finally require the department to submit a report on the sampling to the chairs of the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources and the House Committee on Agriculture, Chesapeake, and Natural Resources by July 1, 2028. The other bill amending the same section, that LD is 1670. It has the same sampling requirements. This one is based on a Michigan budget amendment, and this would require any person holding a valid VPA permit or a VPDES permit to once per calendar year and prior to the initial land application of the sewage sludge in each such calendar year to collect the sample of the finished sewage sludge product and have the sample analyzed by the lab. This will require the permit holder to obtain the results from the lab and submit it to DEQ's website at least 2 weeks prior to the land application. The bill may restrict or prohibit the land application of the sewage sludge, and it would require the permit holder to send the test sludge to the landowner of every property where they intend to land apply the sewage sludge if the test results reveal certain concentrations of PFOA or PFOS in the sewage sludge. Finally, the bill will direct DEQ to modify all existing VPA or VPDS permits as soon as practicable, consistent with the provisions of the bill. The third one is Senator Stewart's bill. I think that's 0088. That should be in the packet. That will amend the same section. This one also requires the testing and sampling requirements. And at the end, it just says no permits should be issued if there's any concentrations of PFAS in there.
Okay, and then I had you distribute something this morning, which was another idea that got thrown out this week. I think the Virginia Watermen's Association had suggested this, which would just authorize localities to require testing. And that's one for discussion purposes only at the top, right? Ms. Cottrell?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that should be in everyone's packet. I don't know if you all can see this, but it'll look like this. It's just a Word doc. The new language would be on line 117 to 118. and also 129 to 131. And that one just includes new language clarifying that the testing requirements need to be consistent with certain regulations dealing with the VPA permit. And also when it comes to the reimbursements for testing for localities, that's narrowed down to the regulations under the water quality standards. And that is.
So that's basically a local authority concept. Yeah. Okay. I see D-Steph and Bulova and Marsden all in the queue. So D-Steph, why don't you go first? And Bulova, Delegate Bulova, I think, wanted to try to provide a framework for discussion probably for the overall discussion before we get into specifics.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was just, I read all three of the bills and pulled up the federal guidelines for basically putting sewage sludge on property. And the federal guidelines have 0.19 for PFAS and 0.13 for PFOA. It looks like the one from Michigan is similar, it has 20 micrograms per, for both. I wouldn't understand why we wouldn't just follow federal guidelines on this. I think that if you're looking down into the nanograms, you're going to find PFAS in everything.
Well, Senator, let me ask you to hold on to that, and then let me hop to Bulova really quick, who I think wants to provide a framework for discussion, and then we can, if we want to get into specific concepts, talk about that way. So Bulova, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know we'll want to talk about some of the details or reactions with respect to these bills. This is an area where the interests of the Chesapeake Bay Commission and the State Water Commission kind of continue to overlap. For those of you who don't know the respective members, the Bay Commission has Senator Stewart, Senator McPike, myself, Delegate Askew, Delegate Bloxham, and Secretary Talon. And so this is an area that we've also been very, very interested in with respect to its impacts on the Chesapeake Bay. And so I think something that Jay Ford had thrown up there in terms of kind of the three areas that we're looking at. So we're looking at the source reduction aspect. And so I know Senator McPike continues to look at that and build off of past work that we've done. We've got the biosolids, which I'll get to in a second. And then I think one of the areas that we're going to really need to pay attention to and should be part of the study process is how do you destroy the stuff once you take it out or collect it? Because it is a forever chemical, and so you can't just dump it in a landfill because then it becomes leachate and then it winds up getting back into the water. With respect to biosolids, though, as a commission, we had asked our Virginia delegation staff to try to put together a framework for getting stakeholders together because we were anticipating there would be a good deal of interest and different approaches. Not sure that we'll get to final consensus, but I think it really has helped to at least illuminate what the issue areas are, some of the pinch points, and is going to get us closer to getting some kind of product for the 2025 or 2026 session. And so I'd wanted to ask Adrienne Catula, who is our Bay Commission staff, if she could come up and provide just a little bit of an outline of the stakeholder process, what meetings we've had, who's sitting at the table, and kind of the next steps as we're going. But anyways, Mr. Chairman, I think that'll provide a nice context with respect to the discussion, and also just to know that we do have somebody who can actually serve as a point person for gathering those stakeholders and trying to noodle through as we work towards the 2026 session. So, Adrienne?
Okay. Yeah, Adrienne, why don't you come up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Delegate Bulova mentioned, I have been working with stakeholders on this issue. First, before I jumped into the stakeholders discussion, I did consult with DEQ. So I talked with Brandon Bull and Neil Zarodka from their staff, and they gave me some very valuable guidance on the topic. So I want to express my appreciation to them. So as you may expect, there are a number of stakeholders concerned on this topic. I'm just going to read through the list so folks can have full awareness. Friends of the Rappahannock, Potomac Riverkeeper Network, Virginia Agribusiness Council, Virginia Manufacturers Association, American Chemistry Council, Virginia Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies, Virginia Association of Municipal Drinking Water Agencies, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, Virginia Farm Bureau, and the Virginia Biosolids Council. And then we also had the Rappahannock River Basin Commission staff on as well, because they're also working on this issue. So we convened one virtual meeting on October 20th so far to kind of set the stage for where everybody was at in this conversation. And then we do have a second meeting planned on December 12th to continue conversations. And then as a part of that meeting, we will also be touring a new PFAS remediation unit that's located down in Chester, because as Delegate Bulova conveyed, that is a very critical piece of the puzzle in this conversation. And so we're going to all hopefully learn more as a part of that. So in the conversations, we not only have that PFAS disposal and remediation question, we also have the question of where sampling of sewage sludge should take place. So you have the option of conducting the sampling at a wastewater facility or an industrial facility, because the reality is there are multiple industrial facilities throughout the Commonwealth that also create products for land application that are not just biosolids. And then you also have the question of whether sampling should be taking place at the edge of field where the material is going to be land applied. So, Mr. Chairman, it looks like Senator Marsden has a question.
Not yet.
Okay.
We're not over there yet.
So I think we do have a somewhat natural divide in the stakeholders about where the sampling should take place. There is a very valid concern that there is a lot of storage and commingling of these products that occurs throughout the Commonwealth. And so when that storage and commingling happens, the properties of the PFAS can change. And so you may in reality need to look at two separate approaches for each of those scenarios. So that is something that we are still grappling with. After the sampling has occurred, then you have to make some decisions about if PFAS is found, what do you do with that information? Is there an application threshold or limitation that you want to set as a result of the PFAS being found in the material? And then is there source tracking that you want to conduct as a response to the PFAS being found? DEQ does have some source tracking beginning as a part of the drinking water program that was adopted a couple of years back. That's certainly something we could look at being consistent with in any legislation. But again, there are a variety of directions that we can go. Quite frankly, there are not yet easy answers to some of these questions because we're still waiting on EPA to define some of the criteria. And then we're also still looking at how things could be remediated, and there being a variety of options available for that if you choose to limit application.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot of stuff bouncing around out there. Bulova, did you have something else you want to?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just appreciate the opportunity to let Adrian give us an update, and just wanted to put this conversation in context with several other moving parts.
Okay, Stuart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Adrian has shown you all, that it becomes a very complicated process. There are a lot of different directions to go in. There are a lot of parts to this that we have to tackle. And I agree with that, and I agree with what Delegate Bulova said. I put this bill in early on, the request early on, as a placeholder, because I was trying to get the benefit of as many bills as I could get since we have a bill limit. And I'm not even sure I like my bill at this point. The issue for me is this right now. Maryland has set a threshold that's relatively low and is now forcing all of their waste to come over to Virginia and be applied. And I think a lot of it's being applied in my district because I'm right across the river from Maryland. And now I have constituents who are finding PFAS in their wells. And I know that it could come from anywhere, but you try to explain that to someone when there's a field right there by their well and they're putting sludge on it, that it's not the sludge. And I can't tell them that because I don't know, but there are a million places that that stuff could come from. I guess my goal right now is to try to stop us from putting any more down in land applications. And so I'm trying to take a limited approach from that, realizing that we do have to go in a lot of directions. And I just offer this to the commission. My thought is we put that burden on the company that applies it. And I don't know as much about them as I should, but there are various large companies that get this from the municipal sewer place, and then they contract to haul it and apply it to farmers' fields. And I get the fact that it's got to go somewhere, and it's probably the best place to put it is in a land application because we don't want it going in the river anymore, for goodness sakes. I think we need to figure out what the threshold is. My bill started out with 0 tolerance. I realize that's probably unfair, but you have to start somewhere, and then hopefully people who have the requisite expertise in this can help us figure out. But certainly got to be lower than Maryland's, or we're going to continue getting Maryland's, and I don't know what else we're going to face. But I think we should put the burden on the commercial enterprise that is applying it, not the farmer. And I think that that applicator should have to, in some way, shape, or form, certify that it is within whatever threshold we think is right before they apply it. And then we need to have teeth in that in the form of a civil fine for that applicator. That's sort of my thought process in the realm that I'm working in. Even though my bill probably doesn't reflect that today, it's just where I think we ought to go. That's my 2 cents on it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think you answered my question, which was when you test this material, I could foresee a situation where a truck might pick up from 2 different sites on one day and then distribute it to a farmer's field. And one site is clean, the other site isn't. And one group of, or some of the biosolids from one are sitting on top of the other. You test the one that's clean. Farmer thinks he's getting a clean sample of non-PFAS, and the stuff underneath is contaminated with PFAS. So I think it's important that we, and I think you did state this, that we make sure that we're testing it, not so much what's on the truck, but what's at the source where that truck is picking it up, and before it's distributed, because you just don't want these different sources mixed.
Lawford and Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would echo the sentiments of Senator Stewart. I've had similar concerns from my constituents about the biosolids, especially from Maryland. And many of these people are on well water. So I am concerned, and I understand there has to be a range, but I definitely would like it to be the will of us to say that if it does contain more than the threshold, that we're not allowing folks to use it, because then it'll have the next effect, which is the water, and then the soil that they're trying to grow their crops on, and then eventually maybe to the Chesapeake Bay, where it's affecting the oyster farmers as well. So these are all things that I would like to, I can just echo Senator Stewart's. Thank you.
Okay. Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to echo, Senator Stewart's approach, very thoughtful approach moving forward. My question is, I guess for Adrian, in PFAS testing, how long does that take? For the test results to come back, because, if you're testing, what are the limitations as far as storage and to be able to get it to the site, as far as the process?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Hodges. So a couple years ago, I would have told you it could take about 4 to 6 weeks to get any sample results back. We have seen a reduction in that time frame, but it could still take a couple of weeks to get sample results back. So at this point in time, I don't foresee a scenario where, a product would be delivered to the edge of a field and the operator would have 2 weeks to let it sit before it gets spread. So there are logistical concerns that still need to be worked out in terms of that edge of field sampling, and who would conduct that sampling, who is paying for that sampling, et cetera. So those are all things that still need to be worked out, in conjunction with DEQ and all of the stakeholders. So.
Vanished. Bulova.
Yeah. No, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know if we've gotten to that point where we're going to need to wrap up, but I just wanted to say thank you for the very valuable feedback from the commission. Appreciate Adrian presenting kind of the process, and I know she's taking these comments to heart. I will agree that the timing and the logistics is tough, right? Because it does take a while to get lab results back, and so you just need to be cognizant of where you're testing and whether it's you find out after the fact that it's in spread, and then it's all right. I'm not going to do that again. Or is there a way to make it so that before it is spread? But those are some really complicated issues. I also wanted to really punctuate the concern with Maryland that I think we all share. If they move aggressively and we don't have a plan, it's going to be very similar to what happened with respect to landfilling and mega sites back when other states in the Northeast really clamped down on their own, and we were kind of caught flat-footed, with respect to having waste hauled down to Virginia. So anyways, similar to that, and we got a context here in Virginia. We also had to be very mindful of the national context with respect to what our neighbors are doing.
D-Staff.
I'm very interested in this because I remember the bill that came up from DEQ where they wanted to set up PFAS testing in Virginia. And I thought it was a great idea then. I still think it's a great idea. I have 2 businesses in my district that treat water for PFAS as part of their what they do for a business base. So I've reached out to them to find out how long it takes for the testing results to get back. And then on the other side, I've got Accomack and Northampton County that abut Maryland, and I've got questions out to them to find out how much fertilizer, how much waste we're taking from Maryland in, and what the results are of that. And then additionally, the chicken industry on the Eastern Shore, I believe they test for PFAS today. I'm reaching out to the lobbyists to confirm that. I know when they sent me a complete breakdown of the things they're testing for, I believe that was one of the things, but I don't have that at the tip of my fingers, so I've reached out to them. And I'm happy to share that back with the committee to make sure we really are moving forward based on the best possible information. And I'm also looking at which lab that the 2 businesses in my district use as they explain the turnaround times on those. Because I think this is very important. And when we talk about what standards should we follow, I think we should look at least starting with what the federal government has put forward on PFAS per acre and where they're measuring in nanograms or micrograms, just so we are following a standard to start with. So, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just as a follow-up to make sure I explain what I was thinking conceptually, because I don't have it drafted yet, I think it's important that we at least meet or go below Maryland's threshold, because if we don't, they're going to keep sending it across the river to us. And right now, the EPA guidelines are much higher than Maryland's threshold, if I understand that correctly. So we're not going to be able to rely on the EPA. And my conceptual thought is this, and talking to Delegate Bulova about it too, I think somehow we've got to make these applicators have some sort of certification process, and maybe that testing and certification result goes to DEQ. And if they are not in compliance, then I think there's got to be a pretty stiff civil fine per load. Not on the farmer. I don't want to put the burden on the farmer, because they're actually doing us a service by allowing us to put this somewhere, because we've got to get rid of it. But on the applicator, the company that hauls and applies this stuff, it's got to be the one responsible for the testing and the certification, and we have to have teeth. Again, I'm just making sure I explain myself the way I wanted to.
Okay, well, what I hear right now is there's a lot of stuff in play and a lot of complexity to it. And even though we've been talking about it for almost 3 years now, I feel like there's a need for a consensus that we're approaching, but we haven't quite gotten it there yet, especially today. It sounds like, Ms. Cotula, you're kind of leading a conversation with a bunch of people that care about this, trying to figure out where the common ground is. And it sounds like people ought to perhaps keep going there. Because I'm not really clear we're going to get to a consensus today. We got 4 different ideas that are out there, at least in writing, some of which our patron doesn't even agree with anymore. So
It's evolving.
it's evolving. I agree. The conversation's evolving, but I thought it was important to have some more conversation today, because I think the first PFAS presentation I ever heard was on this commission 3 years ago. I think Delegate Bulova chaired, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, Lawfer.
I just want to suggest that if there is a plan for destruction of PFAS, maybe next year when we meet, they could come and give a presentation to us, you know.
That's a good idea, although my guess is they might be putting it under Yucca Mountain with the nuclear waste, the way it sounds. But, because I don't know how you get rid of it. But it sort of seems to me that's kind of where the PFAS conversation is, and I thought it would just be good to have some dialogue about it. Like, we have a lot of people that care about water here, and a lot of people care about water watching, so. Anyway, so having said that, I don't think there's anything else for us to do other than public comment. And, because I don't hear any motions or anything, I don't think there's really a consensus. Does anybody have any public comment? You have comment? All right, come on up and let's see. Anybody online, raise your hand online.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I recognize that we're time constrained here, so I'm going to abbreviate my comment. But I do want to respond.
We try to let people like 2-3 minutes.
2-3 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is David Flores. I'm vice president with the Potomac Riverkeeper Network. And I'll get right to the point. I want to share another perspective on a proposal for how to reform this regulatory scheme to address PFAS and biosolids. And I don't mean to get in the way of an effort to devise a numeric threshold or a set of numeric thresholds designed to protect human health and the environment. I think that's a really important piece of policymaking. To help inform that effort, however, I want to start with kind of a different perspective altogether. Farmers have a right to know. farming families representing the largest private industry in our Commonwealth enter a contract and entrust that the sewage sludge dumped on their land, over their drinking water, into the agricultural systems and landscapes they steward, that will not poison them, their neighbors, grandchildren. A close colleague, to give one anecdotal example, also a farmer, recently learned that the family he has long purchased hay from to feed his livestock has used biosolids for decades. The company that land applies sewage sludge to their hay fields had never disclosed that the material contains PFAS, let alone the potential risks the contamination poses to their health and farming business. This is just one anecdote among a growing number of stories about farmers who have used biosolids without any knowledge of the PFAS contained and the corresponding risks. Who stands to benefit from failing a farmer's right to know? I think you'll find that this couldn't be any Virginian who relies upon our agricultural economy, our waterways and agricultural or aquatic resources, who value the health of Virginians. So how should Virginia actualize a farmer's right to know, and in doing so, also adequately resource environmental regulators with information they need to address PFAS and land-applied biosolids? I ask that you look to what the Virginia Pollution Abatement Permit Regulation already requires and for other toxic contaminants. When biosolids are staged on a farm for several days or a day before being spread, at a juncture when the permit holder, not the farmer, operating as the hauler and land applicator, is already required to collect data, keep records, and regularly report to local and state government, that is where a representative sample of the very biosolids that will end up on that farm field should be collected, with the resulting data disclosed to regulator and farmer. Just as the farmer's nutrient management plan, for instance, is incorporated into the VPA permit holder's permit, and along with it, testing of farm soils for nutrients, there too, farm soils should be tested at least annually, with the results disclosed to regulator and farmer. Indeed, the regulations already require the VPA permit holder to collect soil samples for other contaminants before land applications. Where biosolids are stored and commingled at a storage facility or sludge lagoon, there too, a representative sample should be collected for PFAS analysis and groundwater surrounding the facility tested as well, as is already required for other toxic contaminants in the existing regulation. And finally, where the VPA regulation already incorporates setbacks purported to protect private drinking water wells, there too, the permit holder should be required to test well water to ensure those conditions are operating as intended. The code is clear. The foundation of Virginia's regime to land dispose of sewage sludge is a duty to permit the practice in a manner that protects human health in the environment and that prevents pollution of state waters. Narrow and periodic sampling alone, where biosolids are generated, even numeric limits on PFAS and biosolids that are not connected to human health and environmental risk, are therefore plainly inadequate.
Mr. Flores, need to wrap up because we're...
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, good. Good to see you again. And thank you for the Riverkeeper's input. Is there another person online, MJ?
Mr. Chair, there is someone online, but he does not have a camera. So,
all right. There's the camera. Okay, good. State your name, state where you live or who you're with, and keep it in 2 minutes. We need to.
Okay. Heavens to Betsy. Sorry, I've been battling technology trying to get into you guys. So let me find my comments again. Jesus Christ. Okay, here we are. Sorry. Thank you for the chance to speak. My name is Stuart Overby. I live in southern Albemarle County, and I'm a member of Don't Spread on Me. We're a grassroots group working to raise awareness about the dangers posed by the spreading of treated sewage sludge, also known as biosolids, as fertilizer on farms and forest land. We're also working to improve local and state policy on this issue. Unfortunately, the right to ban the land application of treated sewage sludge has already been taken away from local governments, and just about the only authority left to counties is to test and monitor. If DEQ and our lawmakers are going to insist that rural counties continue to accept treated sewage sludge from urban areas, the least you can do is to respect a farmer's right to know what he's putting on his fields. Right now, farmers do not know. Farmers are not getting good and truthful information about treated sewage sludge, also known as biosolids. So today, I'm here specifically in support of the idea of modifying the local government testing and monitoring provision in the Code of Virginia to clarify that local governments are not restricted to only testing and monitoring the substances currently listed in the VPA permit regulations, but that they also may test for other substances to ensure compliance with all the general statewide surface water standards. And yes, that does include the authority to test for PFAS, also known as forever chemicals. As of a few months ago, DEQ has taken the stance that counties cannot test treated sewage sludge, also known as biosolids, or farm soils for PFAS as part of their testing and monitoring programs. Local governments need our lawmakers at the General Assembly to take a simple action clarifying their authority so that counties are indeed able to respect and protect the health and welfare of their citizens, especially as regulators at the state and federal level are failing to do so. And I also just want to note that our supervisor, Albemarle County Supervisor Ann Malik, wanted to comment as I'm doing today, but she had her own Board of Supervisors meeting to deal with, and she submitted comments supporting the same idea via email this morning. And I appreciate your time and attention. Thank you.
Great, thank you for being with us from Albemarle County. And I think that's it for public comment. That's it for our meeting today. I don't think we're going to have another meeting this year. We've run out of time, I think, under the procedure resolution. But I'm sure we're going to have a lot of conversation about PFAS this session and look forward to the dialogue. But thank you for coming today, everybody. Appreciate the work this year, and the meeting will be adjourned.
The Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.